Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. My name's Lisa. I'm from South Africa, a small town called Robertson, not too far from Cape Town. I've been an English teacher for quite a while and have taught students of all ages, all sorts of things over the years. So welcome, everyone. Our topic today is feedback is a gift, which means that when we give feedback to our students, it is a gift for them and a gift for us really as well. So I see one person here so far. I hope more people join, and we will start immediately. All right. So hi, Tyrone from UK. Hi, so long. Okay, great. If there are other topics, we won't be dealing with them today, but you can always catch up with us on all of our videos, which are always available on YouTube. All the topics that you are looking for. Okay. So we all make mistakes in life, in language, even our own language. We might be overwhelmed or distracted, and sometimes we stumble over our words. I'll probably demonstrate that. Imagine then what it's like for our English students. Firstly, they need to take in information, which requires knowledge of the grammar and vocabulary being used, which then needs to be processed to make cohesive and contextual sense. And after all of that, our learners still need to respond accurately and fluently, which is a huge thing to ask. It's actually remarkable when our students produce accurate language and use new concepts correctly. Feedback is therefore correcting our students' inaccuracies to help them improve their language proficiency, as well as acknowledging and celebrating their achievements in communicating in English. All right, with that in mind, inaccuracies are an inevitable part of the learning process and a very valuable one at that. Errors need to come out so we can help fix them. In addition, errors are a clear sign that students are learning and trying to produce new language, which means progress. All right, so it's all part of the learning process, making mistakes and correcting them. All right. So effective feedback should help the students understand and retain information without reducing their confidence and motivational levels. So the correction techniques we use and how effectively we give feedback are important factors in making sure our learners benefit from the experience, from the whole learning experience. We need to make sure that the feedback we give them is positive and doesn't work against what we're trying to do. Okay, so very nice. Let's carry on. All right. So students who feel supported and protected in a way are more likely to use new language items. Constant correction can make learners hesitant to use English. So that's if we stop them every 2 minutes and tell them that was wrong. So we need to be very sensitive as to when and how we correct their use of English. Okay, slide number 5. So always make sure to create a positive learning environment. So correct the errors in a positive and constructive way. Celebrate students' accomplishments. Students should feel comfortable helping each other, their fellow students, and being helped by their classmates. So it's a give and take within each lesson as well. They are doing peer correction as well as learning during a lesson. Okay. So we need to find, as teachers, the right balance. Be careful of overcorrection. If we correct our students too frequently and pinpoint every single error they make, then that is overcorrection. This demotivates our students and makes them reluctant to speak or to try and use new language. If you are being corrected every word you say, it is definitely going to get in the way of fluency. You're going to be very scared to speak if you are being corrected after every word. So the key is to focus on errors that impede communication or understanding. So just ones that are really in the way of being understood. Not all the little ones, not the time to nitpick and tiny things. It's to look at the big picture. And also to avoid correcting errors that are too advanced for learners to grasp. So also don't correct errors that are at a higher level when you can't expect your students to know that yet. And that's in speaking. In writing, too much correction can also be discouraging for students. A page full of corrections can be very demotivating and demoralizing. So just focus on a few areas of errors at a time. So you don't have to focus on everything all at once. Everything all at once. What is that? Anyway. Okay. So continue. Just be very sensitive again. All right. So we just spoke about overcorrection. So that is when you correct every single thing that a student says. Then there's also undercorrection that one must be careful about. When we don't correct our students enough or at all, which can be equally detrimental, really. If you're not correcting any of the mistakes that the student makes, will also not be the right thing to do. This causes students to develop fossilized errors. I like that term. So things that are stuck, they're there forever, and they've been there for so long, and you'll have to try and dig them up. It will be very hard. So fossilized errors are errors that become internalized and so stuck in the learner's mind that they sound correct to them. I think even in first language, there are mistakes that we make, and we've made them so many times and for so many years that you don't even think that they are errors. When people say things like a viola instead of voila, or I don't know, there are things that English-speaking people say that are not correct, but it's because people are used to saying them all the time that they continue to say them. So those fossilized errors are very difficult to get rid of and can discourage learners. And they can be frustrating and discouraging. I'm remembering students that have errors that they've always had, and it's very hard to go back, and they've had those errors for 7 years, and now you have to go back and really dig deep to sort of dislodge that error. Carry on with being a fossil. All right. Okay, are errors and mistakes the same? That is definitely something to look at. So mistakes are inaccuracies that students already know and can self-correct. So that's if a student makes, for instance, a pronunciation error, and they've made it frequently, and they will perhaps self-correct themselves, and they always leave out the last consonant, and they know that, and they'll correct themselves. So that will be a mistake. Errors happen. I'm saying errors so strangely. Errors happen when the students are not aware of the language they're using and cannot self-correct. So an error is something that the student actually does not know is incorrect. So that's the difference. A mistake is something the student is aware of, an error the student is not aware of. The teacher needs to be aware of all of them, and all of them need to be looked at in a gentle, subtle, careful, and kind way. All right. So different types of errors and mistakes. So in terms of all the different things we do in class. So speaking and writing errors include incorrect use of grammar and vocabulary, so the wrong words used, or everything is in the incorrect tense. Cohesiveness, where there's a lack of cohesion. Spelling errors, punctuation errors, tone, pronunciation, and register. So the kind of grammar, basically, or mainly. Listening and reading errors are misunderstanding context, misunderstanding the words, the grammar, and the tone. Mishearing, not knowing what on earth is going on. So those are different kinds of errors, mistakes. And there's so many. Just even going through this, the amount of errors that come up and will come up time and time again. Then we've got interlanguage and direct translation. So interlanguage, we think and see the world in our native language, so our first language. So our brains are used to this system of communication. And when learners and students are requiring a new language, They need to integrate a new system of communication into their way of thinking. I know that if one is speaking, talking, thinking, trying to think in a second language, one often translates, and that's where the grammar errors are often made. So you're translating from your second language back into your first language, trying to think of the word, translating back again into your second language can be challenging. As we all know, anyone who has to speak or work in a second language, we all know exactly how challenging that can be. So they might apply their native language structures to their use of English, which generally doesn't work. You know, thinking second language, the word order is different. Some languages have double negatives, others don't. That can be horribly confusing. Things like tenses, things like some languages, not English, thank goodness, because that's one of those, have masculine and feminine nouns like French, for instance, and that's like another whole way of thinking. So this kind of thing can definitely get in the way of learning a second language, and English in this case. So we need to make thoughtful decisions about what to correct, when the correction should happen, and which corrective feedback techniques we plan to use. All right, so again, I don't know, if you have a speaking session with a student, then interrupting them to correct pronunciation is probably not a great idea. It's better to maybe like an IELTS kind of question at the end of an answer, you can give some feedback. So you can break it down. It can be during the lesson, at the end of the lesson. I'm thinking of one-to-one students. Obviously, if it's a class scenario, you might need to correct perhaps in the moment a bit more frequently so that it doesn't get lost till the end of the lesson. But again, it's something you need to think of at every step of the way. Okay. Talking such nonsense. Accuracy and fluency-based activities. So, since accuracy-based activities should equip learners to produce the language freely, so this would often be your freer practice production stage in a lesson, it's important we monitor our students' errors and correct them when they make errors with the target language immediately. So that's if you have a class, so that it doesn't disappear, as I said just before. Otherwise, that error could disappear and you could forget and it's gone. So that's when you notice that right then and there. So that's one thing. Then there are also times where you need to delay the feedback until the activity is finished. So there's so many different ways of giving feedback, sometimes immediately, sometimes later. If all your students are making the same errors in the accuracy phase of the lesson, this tells you that you should go over key information and concept check further. That's if no one understands, then you have more work to do. Whereas if it's only one student that doesn't understand, then it's fine. It's just that student. So again, something to be aware of. So if it's the whole class, whereas as opposed to one student, it's a very different issue. Okay, if they are busy with a fluency-based activity, so like a long answer, like an oral kind of answer, don't interrupt your students with corrections when they are practicing fluency, because it can discourage them from speaking freely, which is counterproductive, obviously. If we're working towards fluency and then the teacher is stopping the students, that is definitely counterproductive. Feedback should happen after the activity is finished, which allows the learners to reflect on their errors and find repeating mistakes. So there's also something you need to be so sensitive towards. So if it's the whole, really, it's thinking it through, thinking. So if everyone is making the mistakes, you probably need to stop, go back, recap, and then carry on. And if it's just one student giving an answer, then wait till the end of the question and answer. All right. Self-correction. All right, so self-correction is similar to eliciting. So instead of the teacher telling and saying what is wrong, we wait for the students to actually realize for themselves what has gone wrong. Just like when they're listening, the student finds their way to the vocabulary or to the grammar. So students this should or could always be the first option when correcting. So we should encourage self-correcting among students. When we encourage self-correction, we elicit the correction from the students first. So we ask if they understand your questions. So maybe they've made a mistake for a grammar thing, and then you ask them about the grammar that they've just made a mistake with. This approach requires learners to work and interact with the language and helps them to retain the information. So if they have to think through it themselves and correct themselves, it's going to stick in their heads so much better, so much more effectively is what I should have said. This practice also encourages our students to become independent learners. So that's, again, within a class scenario. If it's one-to-one, it's easier to spot, obviously, if you're one-to-one. If your student is unable to self-correct, try another technique and give more information through. So just like when you're teaching, self-correcting, you prompt and help as well. If this still doesn't work, move on to peer correction before you correct the mistake. So if the student can't correct themselves, then give it out to the class and see if anyone in the class is able to correct the mistake. And only then, if nobody in the whole class knows what on earth is going on, then it's the teacher's job to step in. So give the students the chance to produce the language first before you do exactly the same, in the same way as eliciting. All right, great. Peer correction. So students can learn a lot from each other as they all have different strengths. So peer correction can provide a safer environment for shy or less confident students, encouraging active participation and consolidating understanding. So it also means that shy students can work within a group more gently and find their way. All right. Another very useful thing here, pair students with mixed abilities for effective peer correction in lessons. So the very confident students that know everything can be paired and grouped with some who are not as confident, not as loud, so that they can work together in a group, which is always a good idea to have mixed abilities amongst the students. All right. And we move to slide 13. So now we've elicited the students correcting themselves, then we've gone to peer correction, and now finally teacher to student correction. So not when all else has failed, but if you can't get the student to correct themselves and find the error, teacher to student correction. This should be the last resort. So when you've tried everything else. So it is a bit teacher-centered and discourages students' active use of the language and learner autonomy. But of course, there are times when, again, maybe you have beginners. So a group of beginner students, definitely the teacher would need to stand in sooner than a group of students who at a very advanced level. The teacher wouldn't have to step in as soon. So using this approach too much, if the teacher's always corrects, this approach too much, it can create a teacher-centered environment, hindering the students' progress and their active use of the language. So this is literally the last resort. And it can also reduce the students' confidence in what they know. If the teacher's always telling them that they are incorrect when they're making mistakes, then really it can take away their confidence completely. I mean, that happens with everyone, with everything. If you're told you're wrong the whole time, you are going to lose all your confidence. It makes perfect sense. On the spot correcting techniques. So in order for corrective feedback to be successful, it should be engaging and should therefore include variety. So just like your lesson should include variety, the last webinar I did was about things for different students. So things that are for reading, for seeing, for moving around. So should your feedback be different and interesting and fun. So also it's not just the same all the time. So on the spot correction, there are different ways of doing it. Here are some techniques that will help you to elicit corrective feedback from your learners. These are for immediate correction based on accuracy and allow for learner self-correction. So echoing or repeating. So that is if, for instance, it's a long word with 4 syllables. Maybe this is the kind of thing we go, I can't think of any words with 4 syllables. But for a word with 4 syllables would be very useful here. Indication. So we all say together, indication, indication. So that kind of word where you all say it together and repeat. It's one way of doing it. Request clarification. The teacher can ask the student to clarify by saying, sorry, or could you repeat that? So maybe you didn't hear it properly, maybe it wasn't said clearly enough, or maybe the answer was not complete. So you asked about some grammar point and then only half of the answer was given. You can always request clarification. Ask for the rest of the answer, or just to repeat it and say it again in a clearer way. Or another way, that is often a difficult thing, to say the same thing in a different way, like to give a synonym for an answer, can be just like finding a synonym when asked can be difficult. So can that be as well? Okay, facial expressions. Use different facial expressions to signal an error. So if the student almost go, that they know that is that correct? Or no, or just shake your head or nod. That kind of thing could be very useful as well. Simple, but different facial expressions to signal an error, which cuts down on teacher talk time and doesn't interrupt the flow of speech. So maybe they say something incorrectly, you go, and they know, oh dear, I've made that error before. And which leads obviously to body language. Gestures with your hands to make students aware of their error. So it could be, you want more, or no, that's not correct, or make a T with your fingers to indicate that the is missing. I've never done that. I can imagine it works though. Point behind you to show the past tense. I've done this a million times. In front of you for the future tense. Point with your fingers to express present continuous. All of these things right now. Fun to invent your own signifying gestures. So that could also be fun. Students will get used to them and maybe even start using them to help their peers. So if they get used to it, I remember a teacher, it was standard 4 for me, which is grade 6. It was biology, and she said nictitating membrane, which I will never forget to the last day. And she always said that in biology in grade 6, which I will never forget as long as I live. She was a great teacher. Mrs. Devine House. She's anywhere there. She was a great teacher. So I get where that could correct a student, or just get it that you will always remember that. All right, so more on the spot correcting techniques. So repeat the sentence up until the mistake. I've also done that very often, so you get to so many lessons, so many assignments about the first conditional. So that is the first thing that comes to my head. So if he studies hard, he will, that kind of thing. Helps the students who are struggling to discover the error. So he will, that kind of thing. So you give all the prompts up until where the word that needs to be corrected or filled in needs to be there. It helps. You take them there and then leave them. Okay, contrasting. Contrast the correct and incorrect forms. So give students options to choose from to self-correct. For example, he go to the park or he goes to the park. So quick multiple choice. That works very well, obviously. Meta-linguistic clues. That sounds far more complicated than it actually is. So you can ask questions related to the form and structure of the error. For example, is that the correct use of the verb? Should that one be plural or singular? Is that the past tense or is that the present tense? Is that the present continuous tense or is that the simple present? So to give that is that the comparative or the superlative, this kind of thing. The student it often will trigger what they need to remember. And then pointing to the relevant information. So create a grammar table with language students, with language that students have already learned, and point to the structure when the students are inaccurate. Okay, so if we've got our posters and things, or things on a board up, we can point to it and show this. Timelines, for instance, are very useful here, or the phonemic, I always want to say phonemic chart to signal pronunciation errors. So when you can actually point to something on a chart, that is also very useful. Okay. You can also delayed correcting techniques. So now this is later. So this is at the end of the lesson. This is not in the middle of the lesson. So it's one that we're thinking about, we'll pick up at the end of the lesson. So write the errors on the board. It's obviously, if it's a whiteboard or a blackboard, or if it's an online lesson, you could write it in the chat box or on the whiteboard. So however you are teaching, it's pleased to see another student. It has been a quiet session today with students. I think maybe the time has, I'm interrupting myself, but since the daylight savings have changed in the last week, maybe the time is different. Anyway, I will stop interrupting myself and carry on with the lesson. Okay, so we are still talking about delayed correcting techniques. So when our activities are fluency based, as we spoke about earlier, so an oral or an answer to a long question, we should hold back on correction. So don't interrupt the students mid-speech. So without giving the students any clues, write the incorrect language on the board. So students should try and correct the sentences on their own. They could do this independently or by working in pairs or groups. And you can also record learner speech. So that's specifically if you are teaching online. The lessons are often recorded and the students can have a look at it and look and see if they can spot their own errors. And you can also create a paragraph or a gap-fill worksheet for the most common errors made by the class and have your learners identify the mistakes and correct them in writing. You can write down the number and type of mistakes they made. Students should try to identify and correct the errors. You can also use error correction codes. So just so that you know that we are all on the same page. Okay, good. So in conclusion, learners need to see their errors in context to practice and incorporate them into their language use. So that's if it's written down or heard or spoken or in context. So that's, yeah, it must all come together so they can see the whole picture, so that they know where the error is and how they can correct it. Remember that praise and consistent positive feedback are crucial for learners to build confidence, to stay motivated and progress with the language. So as we all know, if we do have to speak in a second language, how challenging that can be. And in teaching English to students who are speaking it as a second language, we know that we must always be generous and kind in our feedback, which I think is why this webinar is called Feedback is a Gift, because it is. We share it and give it, and it's something precious, which is why it is a gift. All right, so that is actually the last slide. So we go now into Q&A, and we can ask questions about feedback and about teaching. And because we are not overly crowded today, if there are general questions, we might have time for those as well. So hi to the two students who have introduced themselves today. Hi from Pakistan and UK. It's great to see you. If you have any questions about feedback and teaching and TEFL, and now is your time to ask them. And I'll have some water since I'm bit hoarse. So we have a full half an hour to chat amongst ourselves about things that we have found. You are welcome to give advice as well if you have found that there are feedback that has worked for you, special ways of doing it, eliciting, getting students to self-correct on their own. I think one of the quickest things when one is teaching, speaking, for instance, I'm just going to talk while we wait for questions, but often in a speaking lesson, one-to-one, an error, not always a mistake. So sometimes the student does know that they often make that error, or sometimes they're not sure. So either a mistake or an error can often be pronunciation. And I found always not to interrupt, because that really does break fluency. Maybe just to leave it till the end and go. Often forget the last T in a word, or is to leave it to the end and not interrupt because it's it really is counterproductive. Jaden, hi. Here's a great comment. In small classes I've taught in the UK, I use colourful pens and little friendly stamps to mark work, not to discourage younger students. Do you think this would be successful when teaching abroad? I do actually. I think that, I think that all students like to be praised and something happy. So stickers and little stamps. I remember primary school getting the stamp, and we worked for those stamps. You did your neatest work because you wanted one of those stamps. If it just said good, it wasn't good enough. You wanted the one that said excellent or very good. So you were working for that. You worked hard for that. The other day, my daughter, who is in matric, got a sticker on something, and she was quite chuffed. She says, it was a new teacher. It was a new teacher, obviously, and had it and put stickers on some assignments. She said, oh, it's so cool to get a sticker. So I think it's always nice. You always feel like that's a nice thing. Often online teaching has those emojis that you can put a happy face or a thumbs up or those things that burst. I know Google Classroom has them. Those like yay or happy faces. It can be very distracting. Often students use those, can overuse them. But so I think those are like the new versions of stickers. So I think that it is a great idea, Jane. Thank you. Hi from Zimbabwe. Hi, thank you for joining us. Hi from South Africa as well. Great that there are extra people joining us. As I said earlier, the lesson for us in South Africa is an hour earlier. I think maybe for some countries it is an hour earlier. For some countries it's exactly the same time it's always been. So there might be some confusion. And Jaden, hi, that's a great extra. Growing up, I had these two and loved to implement them. I do think it's great. I have a group of students, at the moment, and I just I've always taken register and written it in my book. And I've recently just thought I'll write their names on the board, and they must tick their name on the whiteboard, and they love it. So it's a very strange thing, that kind of thing. So a small thing can be very successful. All right, here's another comment here. If a student is not willing to do work and he's not interested in learning, how can we encourage him? Oh my goodness. That is always a challenge. That kind of thing is often for various reasons. Sometimes the student is too bright and advanced and gets bored, in which case you could give a little bit of extra work to encourage them to be interested and excited about the work. So that's one reason, one potential reason maybe why they are not interested in learning, that they're actually a bit advanced. Or alternatively, they're battling a little. So I would find out if whether they are advanced or battling. If they're struggling a bit with the work, then that might be another reason why they're not keen on learning. And now, yeah, I know, because other students, they feel that they're not getting it. So if they are struggling, then you might have to give a little bit of extra help just to sort of bring them up to the level of the other students in the class, or if it's a one-to-one, just that they feel that they are coping with a lesson. So look at the level. Here's another. As an earlier, so not as advanced, if I understand that question correctly. So if they are a little bit behind, I'll try and give maybe gently some extra homework and help and encouragement. Because if they're battling, that can, that can mean that you sort of like, I don't handle. And if they're advanced, for the same reason. So I hope that's helpful. But I would just find out, because it's probably one of the two. Or it's just a naughty child. Who's just a naughty child. And you get those as well. And they're just a naughty child. And there's no good reason. There's just a bad reason. So I don't know. It will depend on the age of the student, whose decision, very nice comment. The age of the student and whose decision it is that they are studying English in the first place. Very, very good comment. Because some people have chosen to study English. Some people have had English thrust upon them and they're not as keen to learn. Or they just battle. They battle and they wonder why on earth they have to do it. Especially you have a student on a Saturday morning and they just, their mother said they must. They're not that keen. They don't really care. It's hard. It definitely does depend on the age of the student. And with all students, if they are 6 years old or 16 or 36, the same kind of issues will come up. I mean, obviously in different ways, but the same kind of issues. If an adult learner is battling, they might also be like, I'm not into it. Or if they feel that they are more advanced. And again, if it's a one-to-one class, there can be issues, and if it's a whole group class. Oh, Tyrone. Sometimes they just don't like you. There are some students like that. There are some, not that many, I'm sure. In a lifetime of teaching, there'll be one or two. There will be one or two, but probably most of them you can pull around. I have one. And he's grown up a bit, and I don't think he dislikes me as much as he used to. But that does happen. That does happen. There are teachers that you didn't like at school, some that you did, some that everyone loved and you didn't like, and some that everyone hated and you thought was actually really nice. So that does happen. Sometimes a personality clash, and there's not much one can do about that. But good point. I mean, also it's one of those things you just have to smile and get on with it. There are some, actually, there's some, here another online student. Yes, so sometimes sometimes your personality just don't blend. And others you like, this is like, could be your friend forever. So, you have a bit of each. All right. Get to know the student. I know what their interests are and get them on your side. This usually works with younger kids. Absolutely. It works with older kids as well, and with adults. If you'd have a one-to-one student, sometimes you teach them for years. Yeah, you can have an online one-to-one student for years. So definitely find out what their interests are and get them on your side. You're on their side. So 100%. And I mean, younger kids, yes. It doesn't really matter. Older people, younger people, all people. If you can find some common ground with the students, You are so much, you're already halfway there. So, but that's great advice. Completely. Student age 6, for him learning is boring. He learns from playing, but it's not possible all the time. He's not willing to write a single word. Oh no. Oh no. I can imagine. Maybe, maybe get him to draw things. That might be fine. A lot of, if it's in an actual classroom scenario, drawing is a great way of teaching and learning. Online, they're usually whiteboards and virtual whiteboards where you can draw stuff. I think that might be a way. And if he's willing to speak, then maybe writing you can come back to. Yeah, if he's not willing to do anything, it can be hard. I feel you. I get this. Playing there are maybe a physical game. Again, I'm not sure if this is online or in an actual. Okay, this is in a class. It's within a class. Okay. So this is the rest of that one. Difficult to teach him alongside the rest of the class. Yeah, no, sure. This is the kind of thing that happens throughout teaching. I mean, you could be at high school and there could be just one person who just never ever listens. 6 years old. Maybe a special book. Yeah, if you give something that's very special, that he's got a special book that he's going to write words in, that only he can write the words in, that might be fun. Or drawing, and if he can write a picture, he can match it to a word, or maybe numbers, or maybe he must show you, say the word. The last webinar I did was about different learning styles, which was very interesting. So kinesthetic was one for having to be physical, because I imagine that this is a physical student that needs to run around. Also, sometimes there's maybe he must run around the classroom outside for a moment and come back in. If he's got rid of a little bit of that energy, might be less, he might be just calm down a bit. I often think sometimes that the student needs to get rid of some of that energy, just like run around, get rid of it and come back. Go, there's some students that I think need that. I haven't had to teach all of those students. Some of them actually. So they come from the past. So I think try and get rid of some of that extra energy and give him a special thing to do. And if he writes a word, he can jump up 5 times. That kind of thing that you make a negotiation. That could work. There's another great comment here. Jaden, thank you. One way I encourage you is with a reward. As I just said, if someone is being disruptive, I'll give them something to work towards. Very nice. Great suggestion. I understand you don't like writing. If you get this done, then we can. Yes. Then we can sit outside for 2 minutes at the end of the lesson, or at the end of the term, I will bring sweets. Bribing is quite fun. Or if everyone just writes 5 words, things like give people, or timing. You've got 2 minutes to write 5 words and put a timer on. So just to change the focus from it being a chore to being something that's quite fun. Thank you. Great advice. Reward is great. Years old children in English schools, we often make books with them. Yes, very nice idea. Getting them to speak and scribe the book for them. They then have an accessible text that they can work on and develop from. Lovely. We also talked about this a couple of weeks ago in the other webinars, because some people, for writing and keeping, and it's also a creative thing, and then you take pride in your book. because it's your book and you've made it look pretty with your stickers or your pictures or your colorful drawing on the front. And that's a great idea as well. It's a great idea to make a book that's your special book. Very nice. Thank you, Rosie. Lovely idea. A timer. Yes, as I said, if you give, and then it also the timer's fun. So it could even be one of those sand through the hourglass kind of timers, or just on a cell phone that goes beep 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 beep, and it's quite fine. Short bursts of learning and sitting, then a reward of an activity the child likes. Yes, drawing or looking at a special book that is quiet enough for you to focus on. Very, very nice idea. Yes, so to negotiate. Say we all do this, then we can do that. All we need to do is listen for 5 minutes and write down the words, and then we can listen to a song, or then we can watch a video, or then we can throw a ball and learn new words. So yes, to break up the rhythm of the class and the activities is a great idea. We have moved a little bit from feedback into general classwork, but it's fine. It's fine. Great advice, everyone. And then feedback for that naughty child. I think what would effective feedback be for that disruptive child? I think if that disruptive child learned anything, then the feedback could really be very good. We can give a sticker, and that the whole class can praise or themselves and this child and this child for writing all the words. So you could do peer correction and that the whole class works together in working towards finishing the work. Okay, another great bit of advice here from Jaden. Thank you. Growing up in primary school, our teacher set us timed tasks. Once we have all completed them, we went to the yard and played cricket, or we were allowed to watch film. What a fab teacher! What a fab teacher! That's a great idea. I think though that could be that you rush through it. I'll do that in 2 minutes. So it could be problematic. There could be those students who fill it in so quickly. But it's also great. It's also, I mean, if you have to fill in every single word or do the whole drawing or whatever. Okay, very nice. But a reward is great, and rewards for school kids are quite small. We can go out 2 minutes before the bell rings, or we can line up 2 minutes early. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big reward, but students are often very excited about rewards like that. And you think, why do you think that's so exciting? But there's some rewards that are not that exciting can also be effective. All right, very nice. I see more great advice here. With feedback, you have to be aware that there are some students who, for one reason or another, don't take well to receiving praise in public. That's also true. And I think all people as well battle to all, even positive feedback. Some people don't like any feedback. If they're not 100% correct, it can be, they think, what did I do wrong? But yes, so it's a kind of thing, again, you have to know that student. They don't want to be praised, or that one loves to be praised. So within your class of 8 children, 30 children, however big your class is, it's another thing you have to be very sensitive about. Everything as a teacher one has to be sensitive about. And that is one of the other things, but great point. And another great point here. Feedback could be one-to-one. Yes, getting an understanding of why they're disruptive and is there anything you can provide to help them. Very nice. So as I said, with that student, if they are advanced or behind, you probably would need to have some one-to-one time. It's not the kind of thing you would say in front of the rest of the class. Absolutely, there would be one-to-one feedback. And yes, and your relationship would improve. Yeah, I think making a child stay afterwards, I think that would probably be awkward anyway. But you would need to. Again, that's in an actual classroom. Online easier because you're right there with the student. And then there's written things, and you could teach to speak to another teacher or a parent as well. But yes, very completely. But one-to-one, if it's a disruptive student, you would definitely need to not do it within a whole class scenario and have it one-to-one. Very nice comment and advice. Okay, good. I think that is in relation to the student who doesn't like receiving praise. So you get to know how to signify your praise without it being very obvious to the rest of the class. So you don't say, John did so well. You quietly, subtly, don't let everyone else know. There's obviously a very specific student you're thinking of. It's such fun when you open each comment makes one think of someone that you've taught some subject. You're thinking, I know him, I know her. All of us have had students just like this. Okay, great. Such great advice. Always, these sessions are always so great too. I think that in a traditional school, there's a staff room and teachers can discuss what works, what their students are doing. And I think that if you work at an actual school, even if you're working at a school in Thailand or another country, any other country, Vietnam or Germany, obviously there will be a staff room and you will manage to chat to your fellow teachers. But I think if you're an online teacher, one is often very alone. So it's great to have these webinars where we can share ideas and chat. So thank you. It's always so useful. Even if you've been doing it for years, we can always learn and share ideas, which is why these webinars are such fun. And I enjoy talking nonsense to people. Okay, we still have 8 whole minutes. So if you have any more questions, you are welcome to still ask them or advice on feedback or other things. If you have other pieces of great advice for your fellow teachers. When we finish in 7 minutes time, there is a survey at the end of the webinar just to ask if you thought this was useful and that you can give feedback to us. Because feedback is a gift, and feedback to what kind of webinars you would like us to do. What do you think? I wish you'd do a webinar on that. Well, let us know. So that would be useful for us. Because feedback is a gift. And I will put that address. I'm going to do it right now. And I'll put it up just now as well. Just now, that is a South Africanism, which means shortly, in my own time. It's not the same as just now for other countries. It's a very strange thing. It's a South Africanism of English. All right, very nice. And all the webinars that have ever been done are all on YouTube, on the TTA's YouTube page in videos. They're all there. So if you need help with an assignment you're doing, or you're teaching some class and you think, if only there are quite a few topics. There are many topics, and they're all covered just like this. And you can watch and see if there's anything useful. And as I say, especially for all of the assignments, if you are busy with any of your assignments, there are lots of webinars on all of the assignments. L5B, L3B, L5A, all of them, they're all there, and different versions of them. Because strangely, even if you talk about the same assignment, each webinar will be different and will all be helpful when you're still writing of your assignments. So we are coming to the end of this Saturday evening, afternoon, morning webinar. I hope that has been useful. I always find it so useful, and that there are all sorts of things that you think, oh yes, that's such a great idea. So we still have a few more minutes. If anyone has a burning question they need to ask, then you are still welcome to ask. I'm going to go to the next page. Go back to that view as well. So now we have the QR code for that survey and also just the address. So thank you, people. Thank you, everyone. We still have 4 more minutes to chat if you have any more questions. And I think that the main topic is that main point is, obviously you always need to give feedback and always make it positive, and then just be careful about when and where within a lesson. You don't ever want to interrupt. I'm sure we all have by mistake. You hear an error, you want to quickly snap at it, quickly catch it. So I mean, sometimes that is useful, sometimes it's not. So it's all just a very careful path that we need to walk. So thank you for joining us today. I always think at this time of the year, everyone's weather is a bit the same. So no one's too hot or too cold, not too dark, too light. We're all springing and autumning. It's such a gentle weather time where we all around the world are sort of, in some ways, together. In some ways. As teachers of English, we are also all together. So thank you. I'm now just talking nonsense. So we have come to the end. Thank you very much for joining me and joining each other. And please take an extra minute or two to answer our survey. And enjoy the rest of your day and evening, and good luck for any assignments you're busy with, and good luck with your students, and hope that those problematic ones, that you find a way for them to enjoy and love the language and the classes. And it's a challenge, but life is, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So we'll all find our way. Thank you, and see you again. All right. Bye.